So we're going to do a video on a Hope Mini Master Cylinder. This is a 2002 to 2007 model. It's in good working order, but we're just going to show you how to disassemble it, reassemble it, and talk about any problems that I am aware of with this lever that you might encounter. The only thing we're not going to take off is this clamp. There's no real reason to do it. I'll take off this anyway. So it's two Allen key bolts. There might be Torx ones, but this is a 2mm Allen key for this one. I think Hope started using Torx bolts because they don't round off as easy. Whereas you might find a lot of these levers, these two Allen keys get rounded off and you can't undo them. If you're lucky and they sit above the cap, you can actually get a little hacksaw and saw a line into them and then use a flathead to unscrew them. But some of them actually sit flush with the surface, and then you're probably going to have to drill them out. But if you get a good drill bit with coal bolt in it, it should be alright. And then in here there's another 2mm Allen key. So just in there, that's for your reach adjustment. Make sure the Allen key goes in there properly. And you're just going to keep turning that. If you've got like a normal Allen key, which is like a long stick one, you should be able to undo this all the way, but I'm probably only going to be able to undo it about 90%, because this is a bit short on the end. So once you've kind of screwed that in, you're going to take this bolt out, nut and bolt. That's a 3mm, and it's an 8mm nut on the end of it. This one's a little bit chewed up, so it doesn't quite go in properly, but it does the job. Just unscrew that. You might find if you push on that, it's not going to go up like that. And all you got to do then is just basically do that, and then apply a bit of pressure underneath, and it'll come out easier. Let's pull that out. Then you're going to be left with a lever. You might find that your lever's still on there. All you got to do is basically do that and unscrew it. Let's move all this out of the way so it doesn't focus on that. And then what you have here is there's a rubber, I think it's called a weather cover, so it basically stops all the crud when it's raining and whatnot getting into there. And then there's a little clip that holds that into place. It's a little bit fiddly, it's a little bit tricky. You probably want to aim this down and try and hold your hand over it, because that little spring is going to want to fly off somewhere. But yeah, I'm just using a little flat end that I've got. I'm just going to put my hand over it. There we go. You could probably get away with using some long nose pliers on that. And there's your little rubber boot. And these tend to have holes in them anyway, they get quite badly beaten up, these little things. And then what you have in there is you have a circlip, and you have a washer as well. So we're just going to get that circlip out. Because I do a lot of brakes, I've got these, which are Nipex circlips. They're really good. Kind of helpful. And they're quite a slim design as well, so it helps with a lot of brakes. So yeah, that's kind of in there. Squeeze the circlips together. You might want to put your thumb on there, because if your piston's not seized and the spring's pushing up, your piston might fly out. So you might just want to cover your hand over the area when you pull this circlip out, so things don't go flying away. There we go. So put your circlip there. It's a little bit rusty. And there's a little washer here. I think it's a brass washer. And your little reach adjustment rod. And then what you'll be left with is your piston. And there's a spring as well behind the piston. I just tend to kind of push it with a little Allen key. If it's not seized, it will come out relatively easy. It's kind of got stuck on an edge there. Get a little bit bigger Allen key, just not flexing as much. There we go. basically the disassembly of the Hope Mini. So on this lever we've encountered a little bit of a problem. Basically when we've taken this circlip out, it's a little bit rusty. So that might mean it could have a bit of a problem getting back into the slot that it needs to get into. I did try and clean it with some alcohol spray, but obviously it's not going to clean the rust, it's just clean some of the crud off of it. So what I tend to do is just get a bit of sandpaper and just run that along there for a little while. Whatever sandpaper you want to use, I've got 800, but you could use a much coarser one if you wanted to. This is just what I had lying about. Just to try and get some of that rust off there so it's back to its kind of more of original size. And you might want to just do some of the edges because they get a little bit kind of beaten up as well. Doesn't have to be shiny or anything or look amazing. But yeah, just try and remove some of the rust really. So that should be alright going back in. I've given all the parts a little clean up. There's your piston. Looks in okay condition. Put that down there, see if we can get focus. Yeah, so the little rubber seals, they look alright. There's no rips, no tears in them. There was no problem with the lever before I disassembled it. So they're alright. The other thing is you want to kind of clean down within there. If you just kind of spray some alcohol spray down there, probably going to get quite a bit of crap coming out. Because you don't really want to rebuild it and have all the dirt there. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but there's actually all loads of bits of grit that's come out of there. So yeah, just do a little bit of a clean up really, just to get things back where they should be. So yeah, first things first, you're going to put your piston back in. This is just my way of doing it. I always use silicone lubricant. You could use probably a little bit of brake fluid if you wanted to, or you could just maybe just run it in there as it is. I'm going to drop that into there. I'm going to have to zoom out a bit, and then I'm going to grab Allen key, and when you push the piston back in, you don't want to push it too hard. You want to kind of wiggle it and let it find its place. And there you go, it's in there nicely. And the way that this goes back, you need your washer, you need your reach adjustment, and you need your little circlip as well. So the reach adjustment goes through the washer. So it's going to end up like that. And then that basically inside the brake will go over there. So that's how that assembly will sit together. It's quite simple. So yeah, I'm going to grab that, put that on top of there like that. Get your circlip pliers or whatever you're going to use. Grab your little circlip. Squeeze it together and then push it all down into the slot. Maybe give it a little wriggle, try and get it to seat in the area properly. And then let that go. Just have a look in there, make sure it looks like it's in the right place. That one needs to go down a bit further. There we go. And as you can see, it's kind of in there. You can use like a flat end and just go around the edge of the circlip where it's an older kind of circlip. It might be a little bit worn still, a bit rusty and not seated in the right place. You're just going to check that and just give it a little push. You can also press on the bar and make sure the circlip's not kind of jumping out of the way. Seems to be holding everything in place. Looks to be in a good position. I like to put the circlip pliers in one of the holes and just kind of try and spin it in the hole. And just make sure that's in the right place. All seems good. So then what you need is your little rubber boot. They're worth replacing if they do have holes in it, just kind of keeps the crud out. And your little clip as well. So you're just going to put your little rubber boot on top. Try and push that down, just try not to use anything too sharp because it will probably go straight through it. and that just gets pushed down there. A lot of the times that little rubber boot's swollen and it won't actually fit in there anymore. It just means it's old and it needs to be replaced. You could probably get away with it though. And then your little metal clip basically goes in that way. So if the brake was like that, the clip's going to sit at that angle with the two little lips facing forward to the lever. This thing's a little bit tricky as well. It can kind of fling off. There is a recess in here, so that little clip does actually sit into a little groove. I'm just going to use a little ball end Allen key to try and push it in there. Once again, I'm going to put my thumb over there just to try and stop it flinging off and flying across the room if it does come out. That looks about right. Sometimes you'll hear it click into place. Yeah, that looks good. You can probably just about see that in there. Then all you've got to do is put your lever back on. With the levers, I've just cleaned up the area a little bit. You might want to put a little bit of copper grease inside the brass insert. And if you look at the brass insert, it's slightly different. So on one end it's kind of, well, this one's a bit dirty, but it's just brass. And on the other end it's got like this little plastic nylon insert. I'm not really sure what that is for, but that kind of goes on the bottom. I don't know why, but that's just the way they are. So I'm just going to get a little bit of copper grease. It just helps with the adjustment. It stops the lever, the reach adjuster getting seized in there. Put a bit of copper grease in there, big splodge of it. Probably didn't need that much. I'm just going to put some on this thread as well. Just because this is not my brake and it will be given to someone else, so kind of saves them having the trouble in the future. I'm just going to thread that on. There we go, this one's turning nicely. Put that into place. Just get a 2mm Allen key and adjust the reach on there again. There we go. Get rid of some of that copper grease. Obviously if you have loads of copper grease sticking out, all the dirt's going to get stuck to it, so we just want to have it internal if we can. And we're going to put our bolt back on top. Wiggle that lever a bit. 8mm nut on the bottom. Normally the original nuts, it's got like a bit of thread lock on there anyway, so that shouldn't come undone. And we're just going to tighten this up. And I'm actually going to over tighten it. So what happens when you over tighten it, the lever's a little bit slow to return. It kind of varies on brake to brake, depends how worn they are. So yeah, if we move that lever now, it's just gonna sit there. So what I tend to do is just slack it off until it moves, until it flicks back to where it needs to be. There we go. So that means you can kind of reduce the play in the lever. A lot of them have got a lot of play. So if you get that bolt as tight as possible, but still allow it to move, you can really kind of get a little bit of the play out of it. Some of them, the little brass insert in there wears, so you get kind of play that way. You'll need a new brass insert. Well, you won't need a new one, but if it annoys you enough, you'll have to get a brass insert to sort it out. But yeah, that's that there. And that's pretty much it. Put your little cap back on, put your screws on. I'm going to actually show you, because I don't know if there's a torque setting for these caps, but they're a little bit troublesome. If you don't tighten them enough, they'll leak. If you tighten them too much, it will distort the rubber diaphragm inside, and then they'll leak as well. So yeah, they're a little bit tricky. There must be a torque setting somewhere. I tend to just kind of do half a turn on them and just a little nip up after, little tweak, and that's normally okay. But there is a little port at the side. There's like a little cut in the top of the cap, and if you haven't tightened it enough and you pull the brake in while this is connected to a hose and a caliper and has all been bled up, it will start to leak a lot of fluid out of this little gap, so you'll know by that. But yeah, that's it really. Very easy levers to work on.